When you make a 3D print and then try to glue the larger pieces together, there will be seams. That is just how it works today. No FDM printer is perfect. There are 3 types of seams, and we will handle each one in a different way. The first type is exterior seams. These are the outside seams that people will see when they look at the model. Our goal is to make them as flat and smooth as possible. For interior seams, these are the inside seams where the models connect to each other. People will not see these seams, so there is no need to spend any time on them. The last type is primary seams. These are the core seams of the model that people will definitely see. Our goal is to make them disappear into the background textures. So when you do a 3D print and you have all these different pieces, there's going to be seams where the pieces join together. And I don't like that. I mean, you could leave it that way, but I don't like that, so I like to cover them up. So what I do is I take a little bit of Gorilla Wood filler and I put it on my finger and I'll push it into the seams. And then a trick is to take a sponge that's damp, not wet, and then you can go over it. And if you do that, there's a lot less sanding at the end. So I'll just keep going, and I'm going to do all the seams, starting with the easy ones on the top, and then I'll go inside and do all the seams. And usually this takes, a bigger seam will take 2 or even 3 coats, like this one here. Some of the seams will only require 1 coat. And the good news is it doesn't have to be perfect in this case because we're going to cover most of these areas with mortar to simulate the sand and plaster. So you won't really see the seams anyway. But if we don't at least start to fill them in, the mortar, you'll see the seams through the mortar. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to work on all the seams and then we'll let it dry and see how it looks. At this point, I've done 2 coats on the back and sanded them down, and I still have rough areas like right here and here. So what I'm going to do is take some of the wood filler and put it in the rough spots. And then again, I'm going to use the damp sponge trick. And I'm just going to hit those areas. And I'm going to go a little bit heavier with the sponge because I don't want to have to sand these again. So I want to push the wood filler right into those holes. So we'll let that dry and see how we did. Here is what the final seams look like. And here you can see the back and the top, which we wanted to do extra smooth because you will see those as flat when the model is finished. To fill in the seams, I'm going to use polyfilla spackling for the outside. So any surface that I'm going to actually see when I put this all together, I'm going to use for this. So all of this and the back, I'm going to use the polyfilla. I don't need to use it on this side or here because those are going to be attached to the rest of the sets. So to do that, we open it up. I use a small spatula, and then you can just push it into the seam. Now remember, this was removable. And then when you're done, then we let that dry, and then we'll come back and sand it with 220 grit sandpaper. And the same thing for the back. So I'll keep going, and I'll do every seam on the outside with the polyfilla. Here's the first coat finished. Now I really like polyfilla because it's easy to work with, it's easy to sand, it's easy to make smooth surfaces. It's very forgiving. If you make any mistakes, again, you can use a wet sponge, or if you put too much, and you can just wipe it off. So I waited 1 hour for it to dry, and then I took the whole thing outside, and I sanded all the seams down very lightly with a handheld sanding tool. And I always wear a respirator or a dust mask when I'm doing sanding. So now it's time to do the second coat. For the second coat, we go a little bit thicker, and we go a little bit more out to get on either side of the seam. And then we bring it down, and we're gradually building the seams up. Here's what the second coat looks like. It's all dry now, and I took it outside and sanded it. Now I'm going to use a damp sponge to smooth it out. Not a wet sponge, just damp, wring it out. And then I just go over the surfaces gently without rubbing too hard. If you rub too hard, you'll rub the plaster off. And that's not what we want. What we want is just to smooth it out, make a nice surface, blend in the edges, and make everything as smooth as possible. For the interior seams, the good news is we don't have to do anything. So all of these seams here are going to be covered by other pieces in the set, so you'll never see them, so there's no point wasting any time on them. Same as any of these seams on the sides, because the other sets are going to connect to it. And on the roof, there's these ones that will be covered by the roof piece. So we're going to do the top piece, but all these roof seams that aren't going to show anyway, we don't need to spend any time working on fixing up the seams. For the primary seams, we're going to again use Gorilla Wood Filler. So I've stirred up the wood filler because I'm at the end of it. You can just use your finger, put a little bit on your finger, because it's fairly non-toxic. It's easy to clean up with water. And then I just want to fill in all the bigger seams. So I just spread it in.
Now, yes, we are going to put mortar over top of all these surfaces, but if we don't fill in these big holes, you'll see them through the mortar. We won't be able to do a smooth coat. So we've laid it in, we've pushed it into the holes, and then I'll use a damp sponge, not wet, just damp, to blend it in. And then there'll be a lot less sanding to do after. For tight areas or difficult to reach areas, you can use a coffee stir stick and just kind of push it in. For the primary seams on this particular model, and pretty much all of Jabba's palace, we don't need perfection. They don't need to be perfectly smoothed out and invisible, because we're going to put mortar over all of them. They just need to not be these deep holes, because the mortar will just go into the holes and then you'll see it. It's not, we need this more of this paste mixture to fill them in.
When you are finished filling in all your primary seams, you can use a detail sander and 240 grit sandpaper to clean them up, if necessary.